Metroidvanias are a genre that I never really flocked to, but can always appreciate. I was more of a Mega Man and JRPG person growing up, but I still have fond memories of playing Super Metroid and Metroid Fusion. I admittedly never engaged much with the Vania portion of the genre, but I've recently been playing Symphony of the Night for the first time and am having a similarly enjoyable experience. Which made it all the more interesting checking out 9 Years of Shadows, a Metroidvania developed by Halberd Studios that seems to unabashedly take inspiration from Symphony of the Night. The art direction was enough to pull me in, and I was perfectly primed to make comparisons to the influential source material, for better or for worse. In 9 Years of Shadows, a curse has rippled through the land, removing all color from the world. After 9 years and the loss of her parents to the curse, a young woman named Europa sets out to the location of the curse's origin, a castle on a hill, to attempt to lift the curse from the land. Europa, armed with her halberd, quickly encounters a powerful demon that she's unable to defeat before being saved by what appears to be a ghostly teddy bear. The bear, named Apino, releases a burst of magical light to save Europa and restores color within the castle walls in the process. Now healed and armed with Apino's magical light, Europa continues her mission to find the source of the curse and destroy it. Gameplay in 9 Years of Shadows is pretty standard within the genre, consisting of two-dimensional platforming and melee combat. Europa is able to perform weak and strong attacks, with weak attacks able to be chained and finished with the strong attack for additional damage. For survivability, Europa has a light bar which acts as a shield, vitality gems that act as your functional hit points, and an evasive backdash that is clearly a nod to Symphony of the Night. Upon taking damage, Europa loses some of her light, and taking damage with zero light results in losing one of your vitality gems. You are able to generate light by hitting enemies, but if fully depleted, you must defeat enemies or perform a lullaby with Apino to regenerate a portion of your light meter. The lullaby is stationary and must be charged, potentially leaving you vulnerable, so you need to position yourself to ensure you will not be struck during the duration. The light bar also doubles as energy for Apino's ranged attacks. Using the right thumbstick and right trigger, you're able to aim Apino and shoot projectiles at the cost of some light. Some enemies and environmental hazards are corrupted by the dark energy within the castle and can only be destroyed with light damage. There is also a skill that you obtain early in the game, Radical Acceptance, that gives you a chance to fully recover your light with a timed action when your bar is depleted, similar to active reload systems in games like Gears of War. Initially, this mechanic was difficult to anticipate or execute properly due to movement obscuring the meter or underestimating the amount of light I would lose, but I did quickly become more comfortable with the mechanic and it did not feel game-breaking to me. This light interaction as protection and projectile energy does provide an interesting risk-reward when approaching combat. In most boss fights, you often must destroy protective dark crystals with light to expose the boss's weak points. This results in strategizing around specific openings and deciding if you should recharge your light with a lullaby, or if it's worth triggering Radical Acceptance for a chance at a full charge. Consecutive uses of Radical Acceptance lower the acceptable window for success, and consecutive uses of the lullaby increase the charge time, so you may not always succeed in outlasting a boss despite these avenues of regenerating light. Exploration of the castle is also traditional to the genre, navigating an interconnected area divided into a square grid map. As you progress through the game, Europa finds different armors that provide elemental effects and traversal powers that bring the narrative concept of color into the gameplay. An early find is the Poseidon armor, where you eventually unlock the ability to swim in water and up waterfalls for some interesting platforming mechanics. Different enemies are vulnerable to specific elements shown by the colored outline on them, and some areas can only be traversed when you obtain the specific armor for that area. When entering a hazard that requires a specific armor, Europa automatically switches to that armor, which is very helpful as more and more areas and armors become available to you. Some puzzles are also structured around the fact that you may need to use a specific armor to activate a switch in an area where the environment requires you to use a different armor. Defeating enemies or breaking containers in the environment will occasionally reward the player with coins that can be spent with secret collectibles on upgrades. Throughout each area are hidden red and blue music notes and ancient fragments that you can use to increase your number of vitality gems, light bar, and the strength of each of your elemental armors. Each armor can only be upgraded once, and there are some visual components for upgraded armor in the form of additional elemental particle effects when attacking enemies, on top of dealing additional damage. There are also musicians hidden throughout the castle that provide you with side missions to defeat additional mini-bosses that you may or may not encounter as you explore the castle. These side missions provide you with an additional resource that can be collected and used closer to the end of the game. As I spent more time with 9 Years of Shadows, I certainly did enjoy my time playing the game, but I can also recognize that it may not be as dense as die-hard fans of the genre may expect. There isn't a large number of unique enemy types, but there is still a level of variety with different color outlined enemies having different attack properties. Also, with your attacks being relatively simple and largely relegated to combo strikes and projectiles, it encourages a rapid mastery of the combat mechanics that allow the player to focus on what the boss is doing rather than try to figure out what piece of equipment you should be using. It's also usually possible to collect everything in a specific wing of the castle without needing to backtrack for more collectibles, which are solely used for upgrades that are limited to health, shield, and armor potency. However, I still felt that 9 Years of Shadows succeeded in feeling like an intentional experience, and it feels like a very accessible game in the Metroidvania genre. The only noticeable jump in difficulty is near the end of the game, where, for narrative reasons that I won't spoil, light is managed in a different way. Europa gains the ability to recharge light automatically over time, but loses the ability to use Lullaby or Radical Acceptance. The final boss fight was the only fight where light serves solely as your protection against losing vitality, which was a stark contrast to the rest of the game. While recharging light automatically sounds great as an idea, the rate of recharge is so slow and the final boss fight is long enough that I would often be unable to regain light once depleted. As a result, it was the final fight that took the most attempts. One final thing to mention is that there was an occasional issue with the game crashing. While there have been recent updates to increase the stability of the game, I did still encounter a handful of crashes that would set me back a few minutes, and one in particular that did force me to fight a boss again. Older reviews on Steam suggest that the cause is potentially due to a memory leak, and while these crashes didn't happen often for me, I do have a sizable amount of RAM that potentially reduced these issues. I would say it's something to keep in mind if you intend to pick the game up on PC, but the developers are still actively supporting the game and these issues may be patched in the near future. Overall, 9 Years of Shadows was certainly an enjoyable experience, with an excellent art direction and soundtrack, which sadly isn't currently available for purchase. While it's not as complex as the game it draws influence from, I still think it succeeds in being a well-executed and accessible Metroidvania game, and I look forward to what Halberd Studios does in the future. Thanks for watching, take care, and remember, keep having fun.